Right, so this is the first advice. The first advice to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma as a young man in the madrasa of the Messenger of Allah is to safeguard Allah, to safeguard the rights of Allah. Now, the second piece of advice, and all of these are connected in a sequence as we shall see. This hadith is an amazing hadith because all of these things are tied together in a way that Ibn Rajab will explain in due course, inshallah. The second, قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم تعرف إلى الله في الرخاء يعرفك في الشدة. So this now is the second piece of monumental advice given to a young man, which is acknowledge Allah in times of ease, and He will know you and recognize you in times of severity, in times of hardship. This is a very, very important lifelong principle that can be given to a young boy or a young girl. It is a principle of life. In fact, as we shall see, it is a principle that you implement in order to prepare for the moment of death. As Ibn Rajab will explain. He says, Al-Ma'na, the meaning here is, أن العبد إذا اتقى الله وحفظ حدوده وراعى حقوقه في حال رخائه وصحته فقد تعرف بذلك إلى الله وكان بينه وبينه معرفة فعرفه ربه في الشدة وعرف له عمله في الرخاء فنجاه من الشدائد بتلك المعرفة. So this is the ma'na. The ma'na here is that a servant, when he fears Allah and he protects the limits of Allah and he observes the rights of Allah in the times of plenty and ease and good health and affluence and well-being, then what he's done is he has تعرف بذلك إلى الله. He's gained an acquaintance, a familiarity with his Lord. Right? This is how you gain, like Allah knows you, because you've come to know Allah by way of these, by way of fulfilling these, by hifz of His rights and limits and so on and so forth. So now there is an acquaintance between you and Allah. So when this happens, when the servant then is afflicted with hardships, difficulties, and things like that, then Allah, because there is an acquaintance between Allah and that servant, Allah will acknowledge, Allah knows of the deeds he did, and He will save him, He will aid him because of that familiarity that exists between that servant, by way of his worship with respect to his Lord. So again, Ibn Rajab says that just like in the example of Ma'iyah, what did we say about the Ma'iyah? Ma'iyah is Amma to all the creation. Allah is with His creation, with His knowledge, with His hearing. And likewise, but Allah is specifically with His servants, with His ta'yeed, with His i'ana, with His nasr. In the same way with this ma'rifah. Although Allah has knowledge of all of His creation, then in this case there is a specific ma'rifah. وهذا أيضا معرفة خاصة تقتضي القرب من الله عز وجل. This type of ma'rifah khasa, when a servant has this ta'arruf with his Lord, then this brings about the love of Allah for His servant, responding to his dua. Right? This is what is meant. And then he mentions the same thing as previously, where he distinguishes between the ma'rifah amma and the ma'rifah khasa. So he brings the ayah, هو أعلم بكم إذ أنشأكم من الأرض وإذ أنتم أجنة في بطون أمهاتكم. He is more knowledgeable of you. He knows of you when He brings you out from the earth and when you are, like the fetus in the wombs of your mothers. This is ma'rifah amma. And وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. Indeed, we created man, and we know what his soul whispers to him. This is a general type of ma'rifah. But as for the ma'rifah which is khasa, specific, then This is the one that is mentioned in the famous hadith Qudsi, وَلَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. Right? That's the ma'rifah khasa that exists between the servant and his Lord. My servant never ceases to become closer to me by the nawafil until I love him. Till I love him. And then the hadith continues that if he was to وَلَئِن سَأَلَنِي لَأُعْطِيَنَّهُ وَلَئِن إِسْتَعَاذَنِي لَأُعِيذَنَّ. That if he was to ask me, I would most certainly give to him. And if he was to seek refuge in me, I was most certainly give him refuge and protection. So this is the ma'rifah khasa that exists between the servant and his Lord, in the sense that Allah, even though Allah knows everything about every servant, here Allah gives like a special consideration for the believer in giving him, responding to him, attending to his needs, aiding him, supporting him, and so on and so forth. So this is the ma'rifah, this is a ta'arruf which exists between the servant and his Lord, which is different to the general ma'rifah that is between Allah and his creation. He knows everything about them and their movements and their feelings and their deeds. That's a ma'rifah amma. Here this is a ta'arruf which is khas. What is the benefit of this? Now, there are some narrations which will explain to us the benefit of this, and it will illustrate what this means very clearly. So, he brings the example of Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, who lived in the time of Al-Hajjaj, the tyrannical ruler Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf. And someone said to Al-Hasan, لَوْ خَرَجْتَ مِنَ الْبَصْرَةِ, if only you leave Al-Basra, فَإِنَّ نَخَافُ أَن يُضَلَّ عَلِيكَ, because we fear that someone might lead Al-Hajjaj to you. Right? So they were advising Al-Hasan that maybe you should leave Al-Basra because Al-Hajjaj is coming for you, and there's going to be somebody who's going to bring Hajjaj and direct him to where you are. So Al-Hasan al-Basri began to cry. And he said, أخرج من مصري وأهلي وإخواني. He said, I should leave from my land, from my, where I live, my city, leave my family, leave my brothers. And then he said, إن معرفتي بربي وبنعمته علي تدلني على أنه سينجيني ويخلصني منه إن شاء الله تعالى. So he said, indeed, my ma'rifah, my acquaintance and my knowledge with my Lord, and his bounty upon me, directs me or leads me to the belief and conviction that he will save me and he will relieve me of him insha'Allah ta'ala. Meaning that Al-Hasan al-Basri, because of the ma'rifah khasa, or the ta'arruf that he knows there is between him and his Lord, because he safeguarded Allah, meaning his commands, his prohibitions and his limits, that gives him certainty, yaqeen, and assuredness that Allah is going to save me, Allah is going to protect me from this Hajjaj. And I'm staying right here, I'm not leaving my family, my home, my friends, I'm staying right here. So, فما ضره الحجاج بشيء ولقد كان يكرمه بعد ذلك إكراما شديدا ويحسن ذكره. Right, so what happened after that is Al-Hajjaj didn't harm him. In fact, the situation turned such that he even honored him, greatly, and his mention would become good. Another example from the hadith of Abu Hurairah, which is Hasan لغيره, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man sarrahu an yastajib Allahu lahu inda ash-shada'id falyakthur ad-du'a fi ar-rakha." Whoever is pleased that Allah should respond to his du'a in the times of hardships, then let him make frequent du'a in the times of ease. Right? This is ta'arruf between the servant and his Lord. That when you are in the times of ease, you are frequent in your du'a to Allah, and as we shall see, asking from Allah and so on and so forth, isti'anah from Allah, as occurs later in the hadith, then Allah, Allah will aid you in the hardships. Ad-Dahhak bin Qais rahimahullah, he said, "Udhkurullaha fi ar-rakha yadhkurukum fi shiddah." Remember Allah in ease, He will remember you in hardships. Look at how, in the case of Yunus alayhi salam, when he fell into the belly of the fish, the whale, what did Allah Azza wa Jal say? He said, فَلَوْلَا أَنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُسَبِّحِينَ لَلَبِثَ فِي بَطْنِهِ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Had he not been from those who glorify Allah, right? This doesn't mean that when he got swallowed by the whale, then he started glorifying Allah. No, this is not what is meant. It means that had he not been previously in his life someone who is constant in glorifying Allah, and that's how he was, then he would have remained in the in the whale until the day of that they are raised, right? So this is what is meant. Not you remember Allah at the time of hardship, but you are one who remembered Allah in the time of ease all the way through, so that when the calamity comes, then Allah is going to save you. Conversely, what do we see in respect to Fir'aun? What do we see? A person who was a disbeliever, didn't remember Allah. So when drowning came to him, what did he say? Amant. I now believe. فقال له تعالى, Allah said, الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين. Now, and you disobeyed before, and you were from those who are, the mischief makers, who cause corruption. Likewise, Rashid bin Sa'ad, he said, a man said to Abu Darda, Awsini, advise me. What did he say? اذكر الله في السراء يذكرك في الضراء. Remember Allah in times of ease, He will remember you in times of hardship and difficulty. Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu, he said, إذا كان الرجل دعاءً, meaning one who is frequently calling upon Allah, making dua to Allah. If a man is da'a'an fi sarra, meaning in times of ease and happiness and so on and so forth, then a hardship comes to him, فَدَعَ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, and then he calls upon Allah. قالت الملائكة, the angels, they say, صوت معروف. صوت معروف. What do the angels say? The angels say, this voice of this person is familiar, because we are used to hearing this dua from this person. We know, we recognize this voice. فَشَفَعُوا لَهُ. So therefore, they now intercede with Allah. They say, this servant of yours is making dua, it's a familiar voice, even though Allah knows. And so they make shafa'ah, that his dua be accepted. وَإِذَا كَانَ لَيْسَ بِدَعَّاءٍ, and when he is not from those who is frequent in calling upon Allah for his needs and so on and so forth, in the times of ease and hardship and happiness, فِي السَّرَّاءِ فَنَزَلَتْ بِهِ ضَرَّاء, and then some hardship comes to him, فَدَعَ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ قَالَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. So then when he calls upon Allah in that time of hardship, the angels say, صَوْتٌ لَيْسَ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. So we don't know this voice. What is this voice? We don't recognize it. فَلَا يَشْفَعُونَ لَهُ. And so therefore they do not make shafa'ah for this person. Why? Because they don't even know. We haven't heard this voice before. Now this is a hardship, calamity. Now this is voice we're hearing. So likewise, Ibn Rajab mentions the hadith again of the three men and the cave. And when they got stuck in the cave, each one of them mentioned a righteous deed that they felt that they used to do, or they did, in a time of ease and a time of no calamity. And so therefore Allah responded to them because of that. So now we understand what it means, right? What does at-ta'arruf ila Allah fi ar-rakha, what does it mean? It means that this is something that brings about Allah's ma'rifatullah li abdihi. Allah will recognize you, right? So if you make ta'arruf, if you have ta'arruf with Allah, then when you're in a hardship, Allah will recognize you. And so, فَلَا شِدَّ يَلْقَاهَا الْمُؤْمِنُ فِي الدُّنْيَا أَعْظَمُ مِنْ شِدَّةِ الْمَوْتِ. What is the greatest calamity that's going to come to you? It's the point of death, right? This is the hardest calamity. So, in other words, where is the discussion leading to? What's the discussion here? The discussion here is this ta'arruf in general is something that as a principle in your life, if you remember Allah, acknowledge Allah and have an acquaintance with Allah in times of ease, then in the times of hardship in your life, Allah will respond to you. However, there's a point, where death will come to you, and that is the greatest hardship in the life of this world, where you are most in need of being recognized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that point in time. And so Ibn Rajab says that فَلَا شِدَّةَ يَلْقَاهَا الْمُؤْمِنُ فِي الدُّنْيَا أَعْظَمُ مِنْ شِدَّةِ الْمَوْتِ. There is no hardship and calamity and severity more grave and serious than that of death. And death, if you are someone who is going to be from the inhabitants of the hellfire, then death is the lightest of the tribulations. Meaning, your tribulation and hardship has only just started. But if you are from the people of paradise, then death is the last of the tribulations, because whatever comes after is going to be made easy for you. Right? So he says, فَالْوَاجِبُ عَلَى الْعَبْدِ الْإِسْتِعْدَادِ لِلْمَوْتِ قبل نزوله بالأعمال الصالحة والمبادرة إلى ذلك فإنه لا يدري المرء متى تنزل به هذه الشدة من ليل أو نهار وذكر الأعمال الصالحة عند الموت مما يحسن الظن المؤمن بربه ويحون عليه شدة الموت ويقوي رجاءه. This is a very important point. He says, therefore it is obligatory upon the servant to make preparations for death before it comes to him, by way of righteous deeds, because a man does not know when this calamity of death is going to come to him, in the morning or the evening. You don't know. You wake up in the morning, you leave the house, you would not make it back to your house because Allah has written, your decreed for you to die. You don't know. Nobody knows. So you must prepare for this. And now there's he says here that to mention your righteous deeds, to remember them at the point of death, is something that makes you have a good opinion of your Lord. And it makes death to become light upon you, meaning the experience of death. At the point of death, if you are someone who had ta'arruf with Allah in the way that we described, then at the point of death you can remember these things and other people can remind you of those things, so that the process of death becomes very light and easy upon you, and so that you can have a good opinion of your Lord and you hope in the meeting of your Lord. In other words, what are we saying? We are saying here, what Ibn Rajab is saying, that just like in the calamities and hardships that come to you during life, and because you remembered Allah and you had ta'arruf with Allah, then those became easy. Then in the same way, at the point of death, if you have built up like as Ibn Rajab says, قال بعضهم كانوا يستحبون أن يكون للمرء خبيئة من عمل صالح ليكون أهون عليه عند نزول الموت. Listen to what they said. It said, they, meaning the Salaf, used to love that a man should have a secret cash. Secret cash. Cash is like something hidden underground. Nobody else knows. Only you know where it is. Like something buried. You've hid it in the forest somewhere. You know it's there. Nobody else knows it's there. Right? So the Salaf used to love that they have a secret cash or a secret resource, a hidden resource. of righteous deeds, so that when death comes to them, then death becomes very easy upon them. Right? Or they would say also, كانوا يستحبون أن يموت المرء عقب طاعة عملها من حج أو جهاد أو صيام. They used to love that they would die after a deed of righteousness that they did. Hajj, jihad, siyam. And likewise, An-Nakha'i rahimullah, he said, كانوا يستحبون أن يلقنوا العبد محاسن عمله عند موته لكي يحسن ظنه بربه. They used to love to, when a person is dying, they would like to remind him of the good deeds he did, so that he can have a good opinion of his Lord. Meaning, so as not to be put to trial at the point, because at the point of death you can be put to trial on account of sins maybe. So they want to make a person keep having husnul dhan with respect to his Lord, and to, get through death with ease. So they used to love to mention to the dying person the mahasin, the good deeds that he did, so that he can have a good opinion of his Lord. قال أبو عبد الرحمن السلمي في مرضه كيف لا أرجو ربي وقد صمت له 80 رمضان. Abu Abdurrahman Sulami said, how can I not hope in my Lord when I have fasted 80 Ramadans for him? Right? So this is at the point of death. This is not like showing off or riyah, because this is the last point in your life that you want to mention this to show off. No, this is because you are having conviction that I worship my Lord, I did the obligations. How can I not hope in my Lord and hope in mercy from my Lord when I have done these deeds? Right? It's to have husnul dhan, conviction, and to face death with boldness and to pass through it like this. Likewise, ولما احتضر أبو بكر بن عياش رضي الله عنه رحمه الله وبكوا عليه قال لا تبكوا فإني ختمت القرآن في هذه الزاوية 13,000 ختمة. He said, so when Abu Bakr bin Ayyash rahimullah, when he was going to die, and they were crying, everybody standing crying, he said, do not cry, because in this part of the house, I have completed 13,000 recitations of the Quran. Right? So his good deeds, he never told anybody. This is like the hidden treasure that he's bringing out at the point of death, to have husnul dhan and to pass through. And likewise, it is narrated that he, Abu Bakr bin Ayyash, said to his son, أترى أن الله يضيع لأبيك 40 سنة يختم القرآن كل ليلة. So he said to his son, do you think that Allah is going to waste, lay waste to your father having recited the Quran 40 years, completing it every night? And likewise, وقال بعض السلف لابنه عند موته ورآه يبكي. So one of the Salaf, when he saw his son, so he's on his deathbed, and his son's crying, my father's dying. He said, لا تبكي فما أتى أبوك فاحشة قط. Look at this. He said, do not cry, because your father has never committed a shameful deed ever. Right? So this is a father who has maintained his taqwa and his piety, and he's saying that I have never ever committed a fahisha. So why should you cry over me if I die? Right? So he's, this is the dying person saying to the son, don't cry. So Ibn Rajab says, after mentioning all of these narrations, he says, فَمَنْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ وَاتَّقَاهُ وَحَفِظَ حُدُودَهُ فِي حَيَاتِهِ تَوَلَّاهُ اللَّهُ عِنْدَ وَفَاتِهِ. So whoever obeys Allah and fears Him and safeguards His limits in his life, then Allah will protect him in the moment of his death. And He will take him upon Iman, and He will make him firm with a firm statement in the qabr, in the grave, when the angels question him. So from all of this, what Ibn Rajab is pointing out here is that when a believer, when he makes ta'arruf ila Allah, meaning that he is acquainted with Allah, there is an acquaintance between him and Allah, then Allah will look after his affairs and make him die upon Iman. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah, Allah will make for him a way out. And Qatada said, من الكرب عند الموت ومن أفزاع يوم القيامة. That Allah will make a way out from him, a way out for him from the hardship of death and the awe and the terrors of the day of judgment. So, as for the one, وَأَمَّا مَنْ لَمْ يَتَعَرَّفْ إِلَى اللَّهِ فِي الرَّخَاءِ فَلَيْسَ لَهُ مَنْ يَعْرِفُهُ فِي الشِّدَّةِ لَا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَلَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ. As for the one who has no acquaintance with Allah, no relationship, no ta'arruf, nothing like this, that he didn't come to know Allah in the times of ease in his life, times of plenty in his life, times of good health in his life, never made an effort to aid the cause of Allah and to invoke Allah, to seek aid from Allah, and so on and so forth, then he has nobody to help him in the times of hardship, times of calamity in this life or the next. So this is the end of that part, at-ta'arruf ila Allah. So this now is the second piece of advice.